From the primitive Sikorsky R-4 hovering uncertainly over World War II battlefields to the devastating Apache gunships that rule modern combat zones, American military helicopters have evolved from experimental curiosities into the deadliest aerial predators on Earth. Most people forget that while Nazi Germany was just beginning to test jet fighters, the United States was already mass-producing rotary-wing aircraft. These weren't prototypes gathering dust in warehouses. They were flying real rescue missions, real reconnaissance sorties, proving that vertical flight could change warfare forever. We're tracking the complete evolution, the forgotten workhorses of Korea, the legendary Hueys that defined Vietnam, the massive Chinooks that became synonymous with heavy lift, and the revolutionary gunships that transformed helicopters from transport vehicles into apex predators. This is every American military helicopter ever made. Let's begin with the machine that started it all. Category 1. The birth of rotary flight. Sikorsky R-4 Hoverfly. This is where it all began. The world's first mass-produced helicopter wasn't some sleek gunship. It was a fragile, skeletal frame of metal tubing wrapped in fabric, powered by a 185-horsepower engine that could barely lift 2 people off the ground. But here's what mattered. It flew. In 1942, when the rest of the world was still sketching helicopter concepts on paper, Igor Sikorsky delivered a machine that actually worked. The Army ordered 130 of them. They saw combat in Burma, pulling wounded soldiers out of jungle clearings where fixed-wing aircraft couldn't land. The R-4 proved the concept. Vertical flight wasn't science fiction anymore. It was the future of battlefield mobility. Sikorsky R-5 Dragonfly. The next evolution came fast. By 1943, Sikorsky had already moved past the proof of concept stage and built something genuinely useful. The R-5 was bigger, stronger, and purpose-built for utility work. This wasn't a reconnaissance toy. This was a 2-seat workhorse designed specifically for rescue operations. Powered by a 450-horsepower Pratt & Whitney engine, it could actually carry meaningful cargo and wounded personnel. The Coast Guard loved it for air-sea rescue. The Army used it to pull downed pilots from behind enemy lines. Production ran to over 300 units, and suddenly, military planners started seeing helicopters not as experimental gimmicks, but as essential tools. The Dragonfly showed that rotary-wing aircraft could save lives that would otherwise be lost. Sikorsky R-6 Hoverfly II. While the R-5 focused on power and utility, the R-6 took a different approach: refinement. This was essentially an improved R-4, lighter and faster with better stability characteristics. It hit speeds of 100 miles per hour, which doesn't sound impressive now, but was revolutionary for 1944. The Army deployed it primarily for observation and liaison duties in the final year of the war. Think of it as the flying jeep, darting between forward positions, spotting enemy movements, delivering messages where radio silence was essential. Only 225 were built, but the R-6 established the observation role that would become critical in Korea and Vietnam. It proved helicopters could be more than rescue vehicles. They could be the eyes of the battlefield. Korean War era, the medevac revolution, 1950 to 1953. Sikorsky H-5. This is the military designation for what would become the legendary S-51. Korea changed everything about how the military viewed helicopters. Before this war, they were curiosities. After Korea, they were essential. The H-5 became the icon of helicopter medevac, pulling wounded soldiers off frozen mountainsides and getting them to MASH units in minutes instead of hours. Over 21,000 casualties were evacuated by helicopter during the Korean War, and the H-5 handled the majority of those missions. It could carry 2 stretcher patients strapped to external pods on either side of the fuselage, not comfortable, but infinitely better than dying on a mountain. This machine proved that helicopters didn't just save individual lives, they fundamentally changed battlefield medicine. Bell H-13 Sioux. You know this helicopter even if you think you don't. The H-13 is the iconic bubble canopy medevac bird from MASH, the one with the wounded strapped to external litters, rotor blades chopping through the opening credits. In reality, it was exactly that dramatic. Bell designed it with a fully transparent bubble cockpit that gave pilots exceptional visibility, critical when you're landing on rice paddies under enemy fire. Powered by a 200 horsepower engine, it could barely lift its pilot, a medic, and 2 wounded, but that was enough. Over 2,000 H-13s served in Korea, and they became synonymous with the phrase medevac. The Sioux established the doctrine: get to the wounded fast, stabilize them in flight, deliver them to surgeons while they still have a chance. Hiller H-23 Raven, the underdog of Korean War helicopters. While the H-13 got all the glory, the Raven quietly did the same job with a different approach. Hiller's design featured a unique rotor control system that gave it exceptional stability in hover, critical when you're picking up casualties from uneven terrain. The Army ordered over 1,000 of them, using the Raven primarily for medevac and observation duties. It wasn't as famous as the Sioux, but it was arguably more reliable. Pilots appreciated the smoother flight characteristics and better vibration dampening. The Raven proved that in military aviation, there's room for competition to drive innovation. Piasecki H-21 Shawnee. Now this is the machine that started thinking bigger. The H-21, nicknamed the Flying Banana for its distinctive tandem rotor design and upward curving fuselage, represented the next evolutionary leap: troop transport. Forget carrying 2 wounded on external litters. The Shawnee could haul 20 fully equipped soldiers or 12 stretcher patients inside an actual cabin. Powered by a single 1,425 horsepower Wright engine, driving both rotors through a complex transmission system, it was the first American helicopter that could genuinely move infantry units tactically. Though it entered service late in Korea, the H-21 set the template for what helicopters would become in Vietnam: aerial trucks that could insert troops where they were needed and extract them when things went wrong. Vietnam War workhorses, the Golden Age, 1960 to 1975. Bell UH-1 Iroquois, Huey. This is the most iconic helicopter ever built, period. The distinctive whop 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 of those rotor blades is the sound of Vietnam. Over 7,000 Hueys served in Southeast Asia, and they did everything: troop transport, medevac, gunship support, command and control, resupply missions. The UH-1 could carry 14 troops or 6 stretchers, powered by a Lycoming T-53 turboshaft engine that gave it the speed and reliability that piston engines never could. Door gunners hung M60 machine guns out both sides, while pilots flew nap of the earth through hostile valleys. The Huey created air cavalry doctrine from scratch. Before Vietnam, infantry walked to battle. After Vietnam, they flew. More than 16 million flight hours logged in combat. The Huey didn't just define an era, it became the symbol of American rotary-wing dominance. Boeing CH-47 Chinook. While the Huey got the glory, the Chinook did the heavy lifting, literally. This tandem rotor beast could haul 33 troops or 24,000 pounds of cargo slung beneath its belly. 2 Lycoming turboshaft engines, each producing over 3,000 horsepower, drove those massive rotors. The Chinook recovered downed aircraft, transported artillery pieces to mountaintop fire bases, and moved entire rifle companies in single lifts. Its hook system could carry anything from damaged helicopters to bulldozers to M198 howitzers. In Vietnam, Chinooks flew into landing zones deemed too hot for other aircraft because their speed and payload capacity made them indispensable. Over 750 served in the war, and the design was so fundamentally sound that upgraded Chinooks still serve frontline duty today, 6 decades later. Bell AH-1 Cobra, the first purpose-built attack helicopter in history. Before the Cobra, gunships were improvised, Hueys loaded with rockets and machine guns, too slow and too vulnerable. Bell took the Huey's rotor system and transmission, then built a completely new fuselage around it. Narrow, sleek, armored. Tandem seating put the gunner in front, with the pilot elevated behind, maximizing visibility and minimizing the target profile. Armed with a nose-mounted M134 minigun, 70mm rocket pods, and later TOW anti-tank missiles, the Cobra transformed helicopter warfare. It could escort transport helicopters, suppress landing zones, hunt enemy armor, and engage ground targets with devastating precision. Over 1,100 Cobras deployed to Vietnam. They proved that helicopters weren't just transport vehicles, they were weapons platforms that could dominate the battlefield. Hughes OH-6 Cayuse. Loach, the little bird that flew into hell every single day. Light Observation Helicopter. That's what LOH stands for, corrupted into Loach by the crews who flew them. This tiny egg-shaped helicopter with its 4-blade rotor was designed for one mission: find the enemy. Loach pilots flew low and slow through triple canopy jungle, deliberately drawing fire to reveal enemy positions while Cobra gunships circled overhead, ready to unleash hell. It was the most dangerous job in Vietnam aviation. The OH-6 was fast, maneuverable, and could hide behind trees, but when the enemy opened up, you were flying a thin aluminum shell powered by a single 317 horsepower engine. Losses were catastrophic. But the hunter-killer teams, Loach and Cobra working together, revolutionized reconnaissance warfare. Modern attack helicopters, the apex predators, 1980s to present. Boeing AH-64 Apache, the deadliest helicopter ever built. This is what happens when you take every lesson learned from Vietnam and build the ultimate tank killer. Twin General Electric turboshaft engines producing 3,400 horsepower, tandem cockpit with the gunner forward and pilot elevated, and weapons systems so advanced they turned helicopters into precision strike platforms. The Apache carries 16 Hellfire anti-tank missiles, 70mm rocket pods, and a 30mm M230 chain gun slaved to the gunner's helmet-mounted sight. Wherever the gunner looks, the gun points. The Longbow radar system can detect and track 256 targets simultaneously, prioritize threats, and engage multiple enemies before they even know the Apache is there. In Desert Storm, Apaches fired the first shots of the war, destroying Iraqi early warning radars with Hellfire missiles. Over 2,400 built, and it remains the most lethal attack helicopter ever deployed. When ground forces need close air support, they call the Apache. Bell AH-1W Super Cobra. The Marines refused to give up the Cobra lineage. While the Army went with the Apache, the Corps took the original AH-1 design and evolved it into something genuinely formidable. Twin engines for redundancy, TOW and Hellfire missile capability, 20mm rotary cannon, and the ability to operate from amphibious assault ships. The Super Cobra became the Marine Corps' primary attack platform, smaller and more agile than the Apache, but optimized for expeditionary warfare. It could land on destroyer decks in heavy seas, refuel from forward sights, and provide close air support for Marine rifle companies pushing inland from beachheads. Over 180 built, serving from the 1980s through the 2000s until replaced by the AH-1Z Viper. The Super Cobra proved that evolutionary design, constantly refined, could compete with revolutionary platforms. Bell AH-1Z Viper, the ultimate evolution of the Cobra bloodline. The Marines took the Super Cobra and rebuilt it with 21st century technology, upgraded transmission, 4-blade composite rotor system, integrated glass cockpit, and weapons management systems that rival the Apache. Twin General Electric turbofshafts produced 3,000 combined horsepower, giving it speed and climb rates that leave older gunships behind. Armed with Hellfire missiles, Hydro rockets, AIM-9 Sidewinder air-to-air missiles, and a 20mm rotary cannon, the Viper can engage ground armor, support infantry, and defend itself against enemy helicopters. It shares 84% parts commonality with the UH-1Y Venom utility helicopter, simplifying logistics for Marine expeditionary units. The Viper represents 50 years of continuous refinement, proof that the Cobra concept from Vietnam still dominates modern battlefields. Boeing Sikorsky RAH-66 Comanche, the stealth helicopter that never was. In the 1990s, the Army wanted a reconnaissance and attack bird that could operate in the world's most heavily defended airspace. Boeing and Sikorsky delivered a design straight from science fiction: angular faceted fuselage to deflect radar, internal weapons bays, composite materials, and a Fenestron tail rotor for reduced noise. Armed with Hellfire missiles, Stinger air-to-air missiles, and a 20mm cannon, it could scout ahead of conventional forces, designate targets, and engage threats without being detected. Top speed, 201 miles per hour. The future of rotary-wing combat. Then came the price tag: $7 billion in development costs, with projected unit costs spiraling out of control. The Army canceled the program in 2004 after building 2 prototypes. The Comanche never saw combat, but its stealth technology influenced every military helicopter design that followed. Modern utility and transport, the workhorses, 1970s to present. Sikorsky UH-60 Black Hawk. This is the Huey successor, and it exceeded every expectation. The Army needed a utility tactical transport system, UTAS, to replace aging UH-1s with something faster, tougher, and more survivable. Sikorsky delivered the UH-60 in 1979, and it immediately became the backbone of Army aviation. Twin turboshaft engines producing 3,400 combined horsepower, crash-worthy fuel systems, redundant flight controls, and the ability to carry 11 combat-equipped troops or 4 stretcher patients. The Black Hawk can sling-load a 105mm howitzer, survive hits from 23mm cannon fire, and keep flying with catastrophic damage that would down other helicopters. Over 4,000 built for the U.S. military alone, with variants serving every branch. From Grenada to Iraq, from Afghanistan to humanitarian disasters worldwide, if American forces deploy, Blackhawks go with them. The most versatile helicopter ever built. Bell UH-1Y Venom. The Marines refused to abandon the Huey legacy. While the Army moved to the Black Hawk, the Corps took the UH-1N twin Huey and completely rebuilt it for the 21st century. The UH-1Y shares only the general shape with its Vietnam-era ancestor. Everything else is new. 4-blade composite rotor system, upgraded transmission, modern glass cockpit, integrated defensive systems, and weapons capability, including .50 caliber guns and rocket pods. Twin General Electric turboshafts produce 3,000 horsepower, giving it performance that matches the Black Hawk while maintaining the Huey's legendary reliability. It shares 84% parts commonality with the AH-1Z Viper attack helicopter, simplifying logistics for Marine expeditionary units. Over 160 built, serving from amphibious assault ships and forward operating bases. The Venom proves the Huey concept still works when you upgrade the technology underneath. Sikorsky CH-53K King Stallion, the heaviest helicopter in the American military arsenal. When the Marines needed to replace aging CH-53E Super Stallions, Sikorsky didn't just upgrade, they built something monstrous. 3 General Electric turboshaft engines producing 22,500 combined horsepower drive a 7-blade main rotor system. External lift capacity 36,000 pounds. That's 3 Humvees simultaneously, or a joint light tactical vehicle. It can carry 55 troops or 30,000 pounds of internal cargo. The King Stallion's fly-by-wire flight controls, composite rotor blades, and advanced cargo handling systems make it easier to fly than helicopters half its size. First deployed in 2018, it represents the cutting edge of heavy lift capability. When conventional helicopters can't move the load, the King Stallion can. Bell Boeing V-22 Osprey. Technically a tilt rotor, not a helicopter, but it changed everything about vertical lift capability. The V-22 takes off like a helicopter with its rotors pointed up, then tilts them forward to fly like a turboprop aircraft. The result? Helicopter versatility with airplane speed and range. It cruises at 275 miles per hour and has a combat radius of 430 miles, triple what conventional helicopters can achieve. The Marine Corps uses it for amphibious assault, the Air Force for special operations, and the Navy for carrier onboard delivery. It can carry 24 combat troops or 20,000 pounds of internal cargo, land on destroyers in heavy seas, and refuel in flight. Over 400 built despite early developmental crashes and controversy. The Osprey proved that rotary-wing aviation could break the speed barrier by thinking differently.